All right, hello everyone. I'm just going to go ahead and get things started here. I'm going to give it 2 minutes before I start with the questions, and then we'll get rolling. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and give it 1 more minute, and then I'll get started. All right, let's go ahead and get started here. Hello everyone. I hope that you are having a great week. I'm feeling much better than last week. I think I've pretty much gotten over my cold. So before we get started, I do want to mention that there is a continuation class set up. So if you'd like to continue working with the group after the 8 weeks, you may do so. Every week from here on out, I'll include a link with the weekly assignment and readings. And some of you have already signed up, so I'd like to say thank you. Additionally, if you think that the class has helped you thus far, I would greatly appreciate it if you could submit a testimonial about me, the class, and how it's helped you. Some of you have already submitted one, so again, I really appreciate that, so thank you. With that out of the way, I'd like to get right into the questions. I'm going to answer them out of order from what the order they were asked in, and I'll try to paraphrase the questions a little bit too. So the first question was asked by Mario. Mario was reading through the articles on photocracy knowledge tab, and there was an article by Any Man Fitness, who's Jason. Jason mentioned that whey protein shakes for weight loss are not as effective compared to real protein-rich food, and that he advocated chewing your protein instead of drinking it. So the rationale behind that line of thinking is that mostly to feel full, as well as it's a lot more difficult to practice mindful eating, thinking about what you're eating as you're eating and how it makes you feel when you feel full, etc. It's harder to do that when you're drinking your calories. Most people are not really kept full in the long term when they are consuming their protein from liquids. I personally don't recommend you drink any calories if you can avoid it. While I'll occasionally have a protein shake myself here and there, it's not a regular thing for me because whey protein actually makes me hungrier instead of filling me up. One of the primary reasons for that is that whey protein by itself and by design in a protein shake is very fast digesting. So if you choose to get your protein from shakes because you can't get your protein for any other reasons, I'd recommend you combine it with something like a fat source such as peanut butter or any other nut butter, or in an effort to spare calories for something else, you can combine it with psyllium husk powder. When you add something like that to a shake, though, you're going to need more water to compensate. So if you just add the normal amount of water or almond milk or whatever, and you start adding in psyllium fiber, you're going to need to up the amount of liquid to compensate because it will kind of turn into a gelatinous mess. Beyond that, I'd recommend looking to cooking or recipes that use protein powder. There are some really good resources for that. One of them is The Protein Chef. That's a YouTube channel. And there's also Protein Pow, P-O-W. That's a YouTube channel and a website for recipes. Between the two of them, you can pretty much find recipes that are high in protein. Most of them use protein powder, and they range from classic dinner meals to desserts to breakfast foods, things like that. So I'd recommend checking both of those out. The first one was The Protein Chef on YouTube and Protein Pow website as well as YouTube channel. The next question was asked by Danny regarding advice dealing with self-sabotage. Danny found herself binging without being or seemingly overly stressed or upset, and that she noticed a trend of yo-yo dieting when she starts to make progress. Her example was that she lost 4 pounds, got comfortable with the idea, and found herself slipping into the mentality of, I lost 4 pounds, these 4 extra donut holes won't hurt. So I assume that in the case of the 4 extra donut holes not hurting, this can open things up to a slippery slope where you end up having those 4 extra donut holes, then you feel like you failed. From the donut holes themselves, they could be a binge trigger, or the feeling of failure because you had them could be a binge trigger. And it may not be something that's immediately obvious or even conscious. So as far as how to deal with this when it comes up, I'd look to some of our assignments that we've done in the class so far. For example, the Fitness Manifesto in Week 5. This is basically a baseline roadmap for where you've come from, where you want to go, and the steps you need to repeatedly execute in order to get there, both physically and mentally. If you haven't done that assignment yet, I really think you should. You may find it helpful as far as looking at where you have been, where you're going, and how to get there, and it should give you some perspective. It's very difficult to be objective about yourself in the moment, so having your own objective outlook on your past, present, and future can help you through really tough times when nothing else seems to. Part of my job as a coach is to help you be objective on your behalf, but your own objective opinion can provide a much stronger resource than any other that I could give you. So out of all the assignments that I've asked everyone to do, I think that one is incredibly important because it should be in your own words, and it's basically a reference point of how you look at things objectively that you can refer back to when in the moment you can't be objective about yourself. So in addition, the tips and tricks that we've gone over dealing with binge eating from Week 4 can help you break that cycle once you feel like you've binged. And it's also important to look back at your non-scale victories that you've achieved and to keep track of them. So you basically need to build a base of those non-scale victories as a reference point to give you some forward momentum. So we do this with weights, meaning our weigh-ins, and we should be doing it for non-scale victories too. So let's say, hey, when I started, I was this weight, and I've lost this many pounds, and you have a record of every pound you've lost between where you came from and where you are, and you have a short-term goal in mind where you want to be, and then probably a long-term goal in mind where you'd be happy ending up. I feel that you should keep track of your non-scale victories, your little successes, and look at them in the same way, so you can kind of give yourself some perspective of, normally, if I had a binge, this is what I would have done. At this current step of my journey, this is how I react to it now. And then set a goal of the next time this happens, I'll be prepared for it. Here's what I'd like to do better. And then even farther down the line, you could say long term that I may get a feeling to have a binge and I may not do it, or I simply may indulge in a food and it may not be a trigger anymore. That could be a long-term non-scale victory goal that you could look at. But I think it's important to actually keep track of them similarly for yourself to how you would for weigh-in updates. Some people weigh in every day, some people weigh in once a week. Once you've learned habits that you can use to help you achieve your goals, you should keep track of those habits and say, hey, this week I did this really well. And I think that's important and is a way better metric as far as how you're growing toward the change you want, much more than a scale weight. So, with some of that taken care of, I'd like to talk about the why, because that was pretty much the how. It's very common for everyone to self-sabotage on everything, not just weight loss, but it's very, very common in weight loss. Most people would rather fail than change, even when the evidence is put in front of them that the change will make their lives better. It's very possible that this fear of change is manifesting itself subconsciously despite you doing everything correctly. So I think that may be what's happening here. From what I've seen, women tend to self-sabotage early on if they're going to do it at all. Men, from my experience, has been the opposite. I personally did not self-sabotage until I reached I was in reaching grasp of what I thought was my ultimate goal. And multiple times I got within 5-10 pounds of where I wanted to end up with my long-term goal, and I subconsciously self-sabotaged myself multiple times. I essentially just gave up, regained the last and hardest 20 pounds, and I've done it multiple times, meaning I've gotten to within 5 pounds of my goal. I don't know what happened. I slipped up, I gave up subconsciously, and I just slid back to where I was, and I've had to kind of dig in and out of that hole multiple times trying. So I've been trying to break that mentality and barrier for the last year now. And it's basically taken me a year to lose 15 pounds because I've done it slowly enough that every time I find one minor slip up, I've self-examined to see what was the cause of that and use that to move forward. So since in this case it's about self-sabotage right from the start, and my own personal experience is more suited towards when you're at the end of the journey, I wanted to get some additional perspectives from someone else that has experienced early self-sabotage. My wife has always struggled with this, and I talked to her about her experiences, and we both agree that the best way to deal with self-sabotage is self-reflection after the fact. You need to learn to be brutally honest with yourself and admit to yourself what your fears are. So admitting your fears as a result of the weight loss is key. So what are you afraid of that will result from you losing weight that is possibly subconsciously stopping you from doing that? Some questions that she and I came up with together that you could try asking yourself are you worried about the way your clothes fit? Are you worried that you'll need to buy new clothes every so often? Are you worried about losing weight in certain places that you don't want to lose weight in, like your breasts or your hips, because you can't control where the weight comes from? It's basically going to come off in the places that you don't want it to, and it's going to stick around on the places that you want it to go away from, unfortunately. Are you afraid of being in an awkward stage where you look really good, parts of you look really good and you're happy with that, but then that kind of highlights the other parts where you feel awful about them? Are you concerned about what other people think about you being healthier or how you look or what your choices are? So to reiterate the key point, in order to alleviate the issue of self-sabotage, it is going to take some self-reflection after the fact. You have to find your fears, you have to identify them, and then you have to find the courage within yourself to move beyond them once you've identified them. And to do that, it could be simply identifying the fear and then making note of that fear and rationalizing the truth of it. It's very possible that you may need to buy new clothes at some point, I would hope. And that's okay. So this is not easy. I think we all know that it's one of the hardest things. If it was easy, weight loss would be easy. But a strong support group where you can talk about this issue is one of the primary benefits of our group, and I think it is one of the keys to being able to lose a large amount of weight and keep it off. When it comes down to it, the physical act of losing weight is the easy part. It's really, these are how many calories you need in a given day. You simply find the habits that allow you to adjust yourself downward from those, and then you lose weight. But it's never that easy, simply because the mental aspect is the true difficulty. And I don't think anyone can do it alone. I just don't think it's possible. So the community aspect and the group discussion, even outside of Photocracy Team Fitness, is key, what I think, is for people to lose weight. I lost my weight prior to the existence of Photocracy. So I was able to get support through forums dedicated to fitness, just from other forum members that were encouraging, that offered advice, when I didn't know what to do. And I believe that was vital, was that support from people. Because in a given day, you're surrounded by coworkers, family members, and as we've talked about, those people simply may not understand. They may have no clue what you're going through. They may have a clue what you're going through and resent you for it secretly, but you may not have the level of support you need from your daily life. So I believe that group support is vital to being able to lose weight effectively and keep it off. So I know I once said that I'm not very fond of motivational quotes, but you guys caught me. I found one that really stuck with me, and it's entirely relevant to everything I just talked about. Winston Churchill said, "If you're going through hell, keep going." So in this context, I take that to mean that no matter how hard it might seem right now, if you keep working at it and you keep going, you will have learned something about yourself from the ordeal that can help you get through the rest of it. And those things you learn will stick with you the rest of your life. The things you learn will be what allow you to keep going and to make those changes permanent. So at this point, I'd like to catch my breath for a minute after all of that and answer any questions that may come in through the live Q&A. So I will just, Q&A should be active. I will give it a minute if there's any questions. I realize that's probably a lot of information to digest. As usual, the video will go up on the YouTube after this is closed. The link is always at the top of the group. And as always, if you have any feedback about the Hangouts, always free to ask questions about in advance for next week, or if it's important, I'll answer it as soon as I can. So if there's any questions from the Q&A. I know a lot of people have said that due to prior obligations, they couldn't make it when they normally did. That's quite all right. So what I will do is I will give it a minute, and if there are no questions, go from there, and then we'll meet up again next week. Alrighty, I don't see any questions coming in. Thank you everyone for watching, and until next time, should be next week. Have a good week, everyone.